Dear colleagues, I'm very happy to greet you all. Do you hear me?
Yes, Prof. Irina, thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, a real pleasure, I would like to
Thank you.
say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We
Okay,
are about to commence. Okay.
we'll be online. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank
Prof.
you.
Good morning, everybody. It's 9:07 at the moment, and I think it would be appropriate to commence. Just an introduction. I'm Professor N. Dorasamy from the Department of Public Management and Economics based at the Durban University of Technology at DUT. I would like firstly to extend greetings to our esteemed guests, more especially Prof. Mishra from India, Prof. Irina Yarigina from Russia, Professor Jingyan Jing from China, Professor Bruno De Conti from Brazil, and Professor Imbangela from DUT. A special thank you as well to all our attendees from different parts of the world who have taken time off to share uh, knowledge generation and ideas from the various participants as well as responses from the attendees. It is indeed a pleasure to share this platform with renowned speakers from different parts of the world, and more especially presenters or speakers that are representing um, countries within the BRICS consortium. Um, Guests and attendees, we thought it appropriate to focus on this specific theme from a BRICS perspective because of ongoing debates and discourses on the importance of the BRICS consortium not only improving their strengths amongst themselves as well as within their countries, but also looking at the extent to which they could possibly influence the global economic growth and development. It is common knowledge there are inherent challenges amongst these nations, even within these countries. But I think the intention is to look at how we could look at possible strategies or recommendations that could improve the current status quo towards achieving greater outcomes in terms of the intentions of BRICS, not within the status quo as emerging or developing economies, but also looking at how they could make a significant impact in the global arena, as well as influence decisions and changes that are currently taking place on or in the global arena. Um, Without saying too much and capturing the essence of the various speakers, I thought it appropriate before I introduce our first speaker to just highlight some key protocols. If I may please appeal to you to ensure that you are muted if you are not speaking, and more especially with due respect to our speakers, ensure that you are muted during their presentations. Secondly, I think this is a webinar where people would have very, very diverse perspectives, opinions, and some very, very strong opinions. But let's try to maintain a high level of professionalism in terms of how we manage arguments and various viewpoints on certain aspects that we would like to draw attention to. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, who is Professor Mishra. I'm not going to go into too much of information about his biodata because it is included in the flyer. It is very, very impressive. He has made a significant impression in terms of his career, not only within India and still very actively involved in governance issues within India, but also a global academic and practitioner who has made a significant imprint in many parts of the world. I had the pleasure of meeting him at the recent IASIA conference and was very, very impressed in terms of his wealth of knowledge. And I'm quite optimistic that his presentation today is going to throw more insight into what is happening currently in India and in terms of recommendations that he is going to present. Over to you, Prof. Mishra. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Nimila. Let me first express my gratitude to you for your kind words. It was not only you, in fact, when we met you, all of us were highly impressed by the way, you are talking there, by the way you are presenting, yourself there. So it was, I think, uh, it was a matter of great joy, I think, for the Indians to see you at Delhi, speaking, meeting, interacting, and talking to all of us. Now, let me make my presentation, but before I do that, let me once again thank you for the opportunity. Let me also thank all the respected panelists and those who are viewing this very, very important discussion. Now, what I am going to speak is on promoting financial inclusion and strengthening economic ties within the BRICS bloc and Indian perspective. Let me tell you very frankly that during the last 11 years, one thing that India has done, and India has done in a very big way, to bring people together and have a cohesive vision and one goal, I think, of how to take India forward and make it a developed part of the world, a part which can help not only itself and interact with developed countries, but can take along with us the entire world, I think, which is in the process, those countries which are in the process of development. And I think this was the consideration why India, China, Russia, South Africa, Brazil, initially they came together, to form this very important bloc, BRICS bloc. And then you have seen, I think, as I would present, many more countries have joined. And what I have been told today is that the most important bloc today is not, something else, but the most important bloc today is the BRICS bloc. But the story is that what the BRICS bloc should do, I think, to, convert these bricks into a building, I think, which can grow very fast and people can see it very, clearly. Next slide. Next slide. Can we come to the next slide, please? So my presentation will talk about financial inclusion, the Indian philosophy. I'll introduce the subject. I'll talk about new BRICS member countries. I'll talk about the importance, I think, of the BRICS. Then I'll talk about the vision, I think, of the BRICS. And then I'll come over to financial inclusion, the way we are doing it in India, what is the status of financial inclusion, what are the barriers to it, and then, three things. Where we call it inclusion, literacy, and grievance redressal, how they've been interacting together. Can we go to the next slide, please? Then we talk about financial inclusion in other BRICS countries, economic ties within the BRICS, the problems that we are facing, in BRICS around financial inclusion, the opportunities that we have, how we should go ahead, and then we'll take cross-country analysis and lessons, challenges and conclusion. I'll then come to the conclusion. Yeah. So, this is very interesting that what we are talking today for BRICS, what we are talking today about financial inclusion in India is not there, it is there for thousands of years. Financial inclusion is in the cells and blood of every Indian, the Indian culture, I think. And then we have got a classical language in India, which is known as Sanskrit. Much of the literature, I think, has been written in that. And there we say, Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhine, Sarve Santu Niramaya. Sarve Bhadrani Pashanti, Ma Kashit Dukbhag Bhave, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Let all be happy. Let all be free from debilitation. Let all see goodness. Let all there be no victims of sorrow, I think. That is very important. India always believed in not, we told like we had a great saint Vivekananda, and Vivekananda told Ekam Satyo Vipram Bhuda Vadanti. Truth is one, but people say that truth in different ways. So there are different number of people. We have Vishnu Sahasranam. In Vishnu Sahasranam, we talk about Sarvat Mukhai. God has thousands of in the mouth. Like there are thousands of people, but problems are one only. Then we have another very interesting adage, Sarjan Hitaya Sarjan Sukhaya, means for the welfare of all and for the happiness of all. This is a guiding principle that promotes the idea of working towards the common good and ensuring happiness for everyone. It carries a profound message of inclusivity, compassion, and collective well-being. Quite inspiring, is it not? Is it? No. Can we go to the next slide, please? We also talk about Vishwatme Namaha, salutations to the all-pervading one. We believe in one word. We don't believe there are different countries. Those countries are just like limbs, I think, in the body. As body is one with different limbs, all the people are one in the name of different countries, different culture, different kind of food. But basically, they all are people, I think. Now, this is all, what I talked about the Indian philosophy. The Indian philosophy is that we should care for the last person in the society. How to reach the last person? Because people who are in the front, they are always in an advantageous position. But people, as we go along, and people who are at the receiving end, I think the last people, I think, in the row, the question is how to reach them out. And there comes, I think, the problem of inclusion. Also, I think when you come to modern theory of economic development, then this modern theory of economic development in the area of finance is known as Manman Shah theory. We also talk about Donald Beckinson and Edward Shah theory. And there, very interestingly, the question raised is whether finance is important or development is important. And ultimately, the research which was carried out, that research established the fact that finance is important. Finance is the basic input. If this basic input is not pumped in, the development process, there cannot be any development, I think, coming as the output of what we have been doing. So Mandansa theory is very important, and Mandansa theory is being practiced. And what we are going to talk today is also a part of Mandansa theory, in the sense that through Mandansa theory, we want to maximize economic development, its fruits, and to do that, we have to reach out to the last person, I think, in the society. The Indian Prime Minister is now in the third term, and the Indian Prime Minister has only one motto. For last 10 years, he became Prime Minister in 2014. Now we are in 2025. During the last 11 years, the Indian Prime Minister has been talking everywhere about one thing, because he is telling Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Prayas. Because all of us should come together, all of us should work for in the development, and all of us should make an effort, and all of us should be happy and living together. That's what I think Prime Minister has been talking, and this has gone, deep, very widely. We have the case of Bhutan. You can take the case of Bhutan now. In Bhutan, we talk of happiness, and we have been seeing now that happiness index is being now built up. It's a different thing. What kind of variables have gone into that? That's questionable. But now, all over the world, we are now coming to one very important conclusion, that we have to bring in equity in society, one thing. All of, all of us have to live together, I think. We have to have a shared ideology, and peace, I think, is more important than the conflict. Now, given, I think, these are the principles why Brics was formed, and you see, I think, that in the Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, they all came together to speed up the process of development. Why did they come together? They came together seeing that development was taking place, but it was the development between North and South. South was just not there. It was getting ignored, I think. And I take you to the, to what one Nobel laureate spoke, that poverty is a challenge. Poverty is a challenge to prosperity everywhere in the world, within the country, within the society. Now, given that all these countries came together, and now I think, as you see, many more countries have joined now. We have Iran has joined, Egypt has joined, Ethiopia, United Arab Emirates, and Indonesia, and maybe I think many more countries may be coming together, because BRICS is not only a trading bloc. BRICS is more than trading. It is social bloc. It is a bloc which believes, I think, in higher values of life, peace, prosperity, equity, I think, living together, overcoming conflicts, or removing, I think, conflicts and giving the feeling that all of us are one. Because when we feel that all of us are one, we can live together. So when we talk about BRICS, we see that BRICS is becoming more and more important. 40% of the world's population is in the BRICS countries. Around 25% of global GDP is in the BRICS countries. In fact, if you go in the history, then you'll find that about 150 years back, till 1750, 1774, India and China, they are producing 74% of the GDP of the world. And I'm sure, I think, that BRICS, by coming together, will again, I think, go to that. Their GDP must shoot up, I think, in course of time. So financial inclusion is important for reducing poverty. It is important in bringing in equity. In India, I think we have Prime Minister's Jan Dhan Yojana, and in Jan Dhan Yojana, Prime Minister, has opened bank accounts. This is one way how we did financial, inclusion. In our country, I think till 2014, half of the country didn't have a bank account. So the question was that if they didn't have bank account, then how they would know more about money, about finance, about savings, about investment, about capital markets, about rate of return. And therefore, the first thing he did was that he tried to connect entire population of India to banks, and he started a very new concept which was not there anywhere in the world, which is known as zero cash, zero bank, zero fee bank accounts. Means without having any deposit or zero deposit bank accounts, without putting any deposit also, a person could have banks, and there was purpose in that because once a person had a bank account, he could then get money, I think, from the banks as a loan. And then we have brought out UPI, Unified Payment, the services, where now people have not to carry cash in the pocket, and one can make payment anywhere, I think, without having any currency, I think, in the pocket. And these transactions are not small, as you would see later. We have millions of such transactions, and India has more this cashless transactions. More than 50% of the global transactions in India are taking place, which are cashless transactions. Yeah. Economic ties within the BRICS, and we see that BRICS trade is about 25% of the total trade. I think it will increase, I think, further with what is happening in the US. It's very clear that BRICS countries will come closer, I think, to hedge against those uncertainties and those fluctuations and those volatility. And now we have opened our NDB, New Development Bank, which India, China, Brazil, South Africa, they all came together and they opened the bank in China. So we have the Chinese, national and the president, and the Indian national, I think, is the managing director. So, the problem of getting, loans, etc., and total dependence only on the IBRD and its four affiliates, that can be overcome. And NDB during the last 3-4 years has done amazing work. Can we go to the next slide, please? Now, this is the overall philosophy, I think, the vision of financial inclusion. Financial inclusion is at the center, and there you see, I think, the first thing is that we have financial literacy and education. We tell people, what is a bank, what is money, how they should be using savings, how they should go to bank, how they should open a bank account, what is the rate of interest, how should they see the money debited and paid in their passbook? No. So this is known as financial literacy, and financial literacy is going in a big way. We started financial literacy program, in fact, in 1983 by the RBI. Then those people who have bank accounts, we gave them customer protection. From there, we have effective coordination. We have universal access to financial services, as you just saw, providing basic bouquet of finance services where we have money transfers, getting money from abroad, paying to different people, paying to for different services. All that, I think, can be done now digitally. and access to livelihood and skill development, we can go to bank. And what in India we have done is that those who have bank accounts, I think, all of them can get without any guarantee and without, any collateral, they can get something around 5 lakh rupees. And this money, I think, is going to increase to 10 to 15 lakhs. So everyone in India today who has a bank account can have credit from the banks. Now, how do we do this financial inclusion? I just gave you the example of Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. We have Prime Minister's, this scheme of monetary development. We have 400 million accounts we have opened, I think, in the banks. This has helped in increasing access to banking services. We have digital finance services, unified payment interface now. Whether I just told you, we need not take the currency. We go and buy and just click, I think, at the icon, and transaction take place. We have policy measures, financial literacy programs, and there, in India, we have, marginalized groups. We have a population of 140 crores, about 1400 million. Of this 1400 million, about 6 to 700 million, they are known as marginalized people. They had to undergo great problems and difficulties during the British era. That was the time, I think, we are not independent. British rule was there, and before that we had the Mughal rule. And in these times, I think, because of this foreign occupation of India, there are people who are deprived, I think, of basic things of education, I think, of livelihood, of accommodation, I think, of fulfilling the societal needs. So they are in a big number, and we have now developed, formulated different programs for these marginalized groups. We have what is known as people who are tribals. I think they are living in far off areas. Now we are developing the means of transportation. We can reach easily, but when India became independent, it used to take 10 days to get a letter delivered in those areas. Now it takes just 2 hours to reach those areas because of air connectivity or because of rail or train connectivity. So lots of transportation and economic development is taking place, and this is all there to see that our marginalized groups, they develop very fast, and the equity considerations come in the society. The inequity which is there between people who are developed and people who are in this marginalized groups, it is overcome, and all of them, they can live cohesively. Now, this step, why financial inclusion has made a very big headway in India. And as I was telling, this is all because the leadership in the country during the last 10, 15 years, leadership could see that the mother of all the problems of lack of finance. And therefore, I think the leadership, they had several problems, but leadership chose, I think, that as the central problem. And they wanted to see that, we can solve the central problem, then all the problems on the periphery, all the problems can be overcome. Because once people have money, they have a voice, they can go to school, they can have clothes, they can have their food, they can have a small residence, they can have some transportation, means of transportation, they can have, some money to fall back upon. So this was very correctly understood by our leaders, both in the federal government and by the governments which are there in 29 states, and also what is known as 4 union territories. This was a common thing. It ran through, entire the political structure of the Indian society. So leadership, I think, is very, very important. I think the leader must understand the problem, and that was understood by our leader. And then what we did was that within that, we found that how we can go very fast, because it may take long time, but how to shorten, I think, that stage. So what we did was 40% of Indian GDP is coming from micro, small, and medium enterprises. So we thought that we'll attack here, we'll concentrate here, and we'll see that all these people who are micro, very small enterprises, or somewhat small and somewhat medium enterprises, they are not in the financial network. And as a part of the financial network, they have the problem of getting credit, they have the problem of making payments, they have the problem of giving guarantees, they have the problem of getting business, I think. Then agriculture, India is a country, I think, yes, there is a transformation now. About at one time when we became independent, about 70% of GDP was coming from agriculture. But now I think through development process, we have brought it down this to 17 to 18%. But still, half of the country lives, I think, for employment on agriculture. So we thought that let us, I think, let do work concentratedly on agriculture and let us bring all the agriculturists of small farm, medium farm, large farms, farms of all the type which are bankable, non-bankable, irrigated, non-irrigated, having one crop or many crops, let them all become a part of the network of our financial institution. And then we have 800 districts in this country. Of these 800 districts, 150 are the districts where there was no water for drinking. There were no roads, I think, to be there. There were no dispensaries or health facilities there. There were no schools, there. And people, I think, they were living in great distress when India became free because nobody talked about those districts under the British administration. So this was then realized by our present, political leaders, and they said that for this 170 districts, we will have a different kind of network of financial inclusion. What we'll do is that they have not to come to cities, they have not to come to towns. We'll go there and set up the bank. We'll go there and provide guarantees, etc., on behalf of the government. We'll help them in getting money and overseeing that money is used properly. We'll help them in selling their crops and they're selling their products. This all was, and this is bringing a very, very great, transformation. Because at one time when India became independent, these 170 districts, they felt that they are not a part of India. And I have been traveling, abroad. I have been to all parts of India. And initially, I would not feel happy when they would say that, have you come from India? Now, this was a big problem because money was not reaching there. But with this financial inclusion, now all of them, they become a part of the so-called India as a nation now. We don't have problems in any part of the country. And this banks, etc., banking network, financial network has regulatory framework. We have the very extensive regulatory framework, starting from Reserve Bank of India to government banks, to private sector banks, to non-banking financial institutions. All these are there. And the Reserve Bank of India and our capital market are doing a lot of work on financial inclusion by starting financial literacy programs, I think, by telling them how we should go and reach out, to small farmers. But with all that also, we have barriers to financial inclusion. One is that people don't have surplus income. Then, as much customers require, we are not able to give. They don't have requisite documents. That take some time. Some people are not aware of that. Some people, we have lack of trust in the system. High transaction cost is there. We are trying to reduce. Remoteness of service provider still is there, and poor quality of services because people who are providing service as managers, they are still getting, I think, getting a feel that they should become a part. They are not driven by the government. It is their own work. Yes, please. Can we come to next slide, please? Next slide, please. Now, this inclusion, now there is a triad, financial inclusion in the middle, and we have financial inclusion policies. We have extensive policies, and these policies are not only policies drafted, they are being implemented. There is a policy advisory system. There is a monitoring on that. Then we have, as I discussed, financial literacy initiatives are there. And then we also have customer grievance redressal framework. Professor Nirmala was there recently in Delhi, and we have a CP Gram, where anybody from India, from anywhere, can lodge a complaint against any government system, and under CP Gram, this has to be addressed by the ministry. Ministry has to answer. Ministry has to report back within 24 hours. They have to attend to the complaints that an Indian citizen has come across or is experiencing, I think. So that's a very great thing. Then when you talk of financial inclusion in BRICS countries, not that India is doing. As I told, that BRICS country is one lump, I think. They are different countries, but they are facing same problems. They have the same kind of approach, I think they have to. And they have the same kind of development focus. And therefore, in Brazil, where the correspondent banking network, I was in Rio, I was in other parts of Brazil, and I saw it is working fantastically well. Social target programs are there. Power for all, I think. Poverty for nobody. Lots of programs, I think, and they have the financial input. Russia, we have the national payment system, financial literacy initiative. China, digital currency is there in China. In India, is also that is coming very soon. Rural financial inclusion. I was amazed to see in China that a farmer was sleeping and taking hookah because he had done day's work. That is happening in Punjab, one state of India, where people after day's work in the day, you'll see them sweating, but in the evening, you'll find them in the five store, I think. South Africa, I have been to South Africa a couple of times, and I see, I think, big farms there, and councils are there, financial sector charter is there, and after 1991, as a part of R&D, what kind of transformation South Africa has experienced, I think. That's a lesson, I think, not only for BRICS countries, but I think for the entire world. The growth of South Africa is amazing, I think. Yeah, can be, sorry. Can we go to trade and investment is going to increase $200 billion. But I'm sure that it will be $1 trillion soon because the problems that countries are facing today, US versus other countries, there is no other way. But these countries have to promote, I think, the trade with them. New Development Bank has to improve, I think, its lending. Strategic alliance has to be there. For instance, now you take Brazil and other parts of BRICS, and we are seeing that Brazil, through its strategic alliance with South Africa, India, and other countries, is now promoting the use of Jethra in producing electricity. So green electricity. The concept of green electricity is coming from Brazil, which has come to South Africa in a very, very big way, I understand. And from South Africa, people are looking at that, big countries, and I think India is following in a bit, no, not in a large way, but we are now trying to understand that very, very interesting experience that Brazil and South Africa have, how they have done it. Other countries could have done that, but they didn't understand the spirit and also the ecosystem that Brazil and South Africa created to generate power through Jethro. And development cooperation, I think, like in these countries have to be there. We have a technology cooperation now. AI is one issue. Artificial intelligence, I think, can be a digital, public infrastructure, very, very important. What kind of instruments, I think, we should have. What kind of elements, I think, should we have? Open software, this kind of software. No, it requires huge investment. When they come together, I think, financially, when they come together, I'm sure that China has already come with deep say. But if these five countries, I think, they can come and they can have a marathon kind of, this AI, which can help them generating jobs on the one end, removing drudgery on the other end, improving output on the other end, improving quality there, increasing savings, and making society very happy, I think. Energy is one thing. As Europe has one grid, why can't South Africa, why can't our BRIC countries have one common grid? If we can do that, energy security is a very, very important issue. I think when we look of these 11 countries of our BRICS now, energy is one problem that they have been facing. How we can come. Climate change is very important, and climate change in the BRICS countries which depend somewhat on agriculture, 20-25% of their GDP is coming from agriculture. Climate change has affected the crop productivity, crop output, I think, delay, I think, in the crop output. Then quality has, come down. And these are very, very important. So we can come together and we can then, mount R&D programs and see how we can overcome, I think, climate change problems. And you have seen now the world is divided, I think. Some parts of the world, they say they are not connected to climate change. They have created the problem of climate change, I think. Now they're getting away from that. But it is our problem we have to solve. Internal challenges, Internal challenges, every country of the BRICS has diverse economic priorities. But in diverse also, as we say in India, in diversity, only we have to bring unity, I think. So we have to see what is the common thread, which is, I mean, the common thread is poverty. The common thread is investments, I think, in this country. The common thread is, giving financial support to people. The common thread is creating a common market, I think. The common thread is seeing how we can have a bilateral trade or multilateral trade in these countries without tariffs. The common trend can be that can we provide trade services, I think, in these countries. Can we use, I think, our ports and our sea things, and can we have re-export? These are very, very important things. As these countries come together, I tell you, it will be very good for the world. And then these five countries, they sit over, they are the nuclear powers, I think. They are these powers in the field of science. In social sciences, they have done so much. Highly educated people are there in these countries. They have enough food. Now, given that, I think the geopolitical tension, if these countries come together, they can become a good mediator in solving geopolitical problems in different parts of the world. Then external challenges are there. Now, Western dominance was there. As I told you, you see the case of India, where had 45% of GDP to 1774. We came down to 1.5% of GDP because of Western dominance, I think. Now, there at one time, I was in a British conference, and they told me that India is a burden on us, forgetting that it was India, which gave them so much money. India is not a burden. These big countries are not a burden, I think. But you can't be, fighting out. I think that's not a good attitude. The thing is that can we make our economies by coming together? Can we make them burgeoning? Can we make them sizable? Can we make them visible? Can we make them impactful? I think these are the changes. So protectionism is one thing. We must remove protection, I think. Not only that we should remove protection because of there is a pressure from other countries, which is happening today. And we must, I think, these 11 countries or our big countries should come together and unilaterally they should say that there will be few movement of goods, services, and people in these countries. Investment, people, I think, jobs, I think, goods, I think, finish, they should move. Sustainable development, there can be joint projects like climate change, can't be one country's project. Renewable energy can't be one country's project. India is doing so much, China is doing so much, Brazil is doing so much, South Africa is doing, or on the other, United Arab Emirates, I think, is doing so much, Turkey is doing so much. We can all come together and we can solve, I think, energy investment. Because the question is not only of investment, the question is that in what form investment take place? Does it take place in the form of debt? Does it take place in the form of equity? No, because these kind of investments have a lot to do with the economic development process of that particular country. Can we go to the next slide, please? So the way ahead is that we must strengthen cooperation. BRICS summit. Every time I think I was a part of BRICS summit in India, I was a part of BRICS summit in China, I was a part of BRICS summit in Brazil, and I'm very grateful to person Nimla ji who came, and I had not much time because she was very busy and people were not leaving her. She was actively participating in all the sessions, but then she was very kind enough to give me an opportunity to be a part of this BRICS, dialogue. So I said I am also with South Africa. Uh, Always, I think talking is very important. Dialogue is very important. I think we must promote. I think education, educational exchange, monetary exchange, exchange in terms of fellowships, exchange in terms of groups coming, exchange in terms of understanding art, literature, and culture. I think of these countries, exchange on of having lectures, exchange of politicians coming, exchange of economists coming, exchange on R&D on agriculture, as I said, to exchange on R&D on how we can remove. I think the use of plastics. I think how we can use as in Brazil, how we can use more jathoka. I think there is so much that each country has to give. Now we must use BRICS as the platform for exchange. I think exchange is always good. You give something, we give something. we exchange, I think that the theory of trade, which was initiated, I think, in 1774, that basic theory of trade, exchange will take us to prosperity. Enhanced policy coordination. Also, I think we must have through this mechanism of conferences and a permanent secretariat, which most probably is there in South Africa, in Brazil. This should see that policy incongruities are not there. Nothing India should do which harms South Africa. Nothing South Africa should do which harms, I think, Indonesia. It is always good that we have a comprehensive group policy. Today, world is one. India cannot think that by doing something for itself, it can harm others. Because as I told you, poverty anywhere is a problem for prosperous countries. And like, poultry, if one bird dies, I think entire flock of birds, they die. If any country is in problem, other country will get automatically into problem. And there are big countries as a whole. Let us not talk of the world. Let's first take stock of our own problems. And we should see that there are no policy conflicts. There is a good discussion, I think. And there must be a friendly advice to countries that please, your policy should be comprehensive. Your policy should be generous. Your policy should take stock of the needs, people, culture, and the strategy of all the countries. So innovative financial solutions is that can the alternative financial mechanisms, can we have one stock market? Can we have, I think, we have the bank in China, I think. Can we have its branches in other countries? Can we have a common currency, I think, for the BRICS countries? Can we have, free flow? Can we have a strong bond market for these countries? Why only some countries have a strong bond market? China is doing well, India is doing well. But entire BRICS countries, can they have their own strong bond market? Can we strengthen? I think when we talk of financial solutions will come from third level of government, not federal, not state, but municipal governments. Municipalities are very important, I think, and I'm happy that South Africa has done so much work. As a part of R&D, I think they have the municipal governance, they brought an act. Can we do something like that? Can we do something? Can we take communities, I think, together? And that again, South Africa has done excellent work. In South Africa, I understand that in the constitution, they have a provision that the person who is the tribal landlord has to be taken into confidence before he pass the law. So in the list of the powers to state, powers to government, there is, I think, power to tribal communities also. So
Sorry,
without
Prof.
I'll just take 2 minutes and finish this. So way ahead. Inclusive growth, I
Sorry,
think,
Prof.
is one thing. Yeah.
Sorry, Prof.
Thank you.
Just to round up for the sake of time, I'm sorry about that.
Okay, fine, no problem. Good. Thank you so much. And I'm happy that Professor Nirmala gave me this opportunity, and I'm very grateful to all of you. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Prof, for that comprehensive and deep sharing of your Indian perspective as well as the initiatives in India. But just to draw attention, I think very important is the Indian philosophy of collectiveness, togetherness, happiness, and I think which is a mantra that is driving the basic principles of cohesiveness, cooperation, and collaboration amongst the BRICS nations. Thank you for that, Prof. We would consider the questions and answers. I see Prof. Sharma has come on board with a question during the time that has been allocated. In view of time constraints, I'd like to now move on to Prof. Irina Yarigina, a renowned professor in banking, finance, and economics, who is currently based at the Gmo University in Russia. I believe she's currently in India as well. I'm not too sure which part of India, but nevertheless enjoyed, Prof, and over to you with your presentation. Thank you. You may continue, Prof.
Dear colleagues, really, I'm very happy to greet you, and I would like to ask you the authorization for sharing just my presentation, if possible. Thank you very much indeed. I will do it myself. And in the meantime, let me pass greetings from India, just from one of the universities in Ranchi. And actually, we are having just a very fruitful meeting on organized international crime and terrorism. And actually, I would like to share some ideas concerning will you open it? Just concerning the financial relations within Brics to develop the aspect that was presented before, and just to give you some ideas concerning further developments. I would like to stress the point that within the... Do you hear me and see me?
Yes, Prof.
Oh, perfect.
Thank you.
Just within the declaration that was held in Kazan in Russia, we had some very important decisions as far as our relations within BRICS are concerned. And I will refer to the articles of the declaration, and at the same time just stress some very important aspects concerning the sustainable economic growth and successful reproduction of our countries, not only of BRICS, but BRICS platform, let's put it like that. In the Article 58 was indicated that we are all interested in safe finance and effective risk management, and the support of economic entities for better living is the main task and goal of our public institutions within the financial and economic partnership. As far as the financial partnership is concerned, it's really very important just to be within this activity, because it gives us possibilities to shorter periods for strategic development and to share technological and administration reserves. In Russia, actually, we have a very important activity concerning the technology transfer, and we are very honored to have relations with some universities in South Africa, in India, and in some other countries. It helps us to meet professional challenges and to go along the road of harmonization of our relations within direct investments and portfolio investments. Some of them, they are already supported by our governments, and just our challenges are met successfully. That gives just the assessment of our relations and the global GDP output as far as BRICS is concerned is better and higher than within G7. And global exports and the imports, they are just developing within our countries, and they are really very successful. And just the volume of financial transactions of private companies and the state-owned companies is also just developing, and probably China is ahead, and the other countries take part in all that, just within the Eurasian Economic Union, within our other partner countries in different parts of the world, within the Shanghai organization. We are also very interested and active as far as the financial activity is concerned, taking into consideration, but most of the countries, BRICS countries, they are participants and members of the Shanghai organization of cooperation. We are going along the road of custom union, mutual market operations, economic union, the currency union with the usage of local currencies, and the free economic cooperation. The aspect of the usage of local currencies is indicated in the Article 59 of the Kazan Declaration, and the Article 63 is devoted to the development of the relations of our countries just through the financial institutions with Brics participation. And you know perfectly well that Russia is under sanctions and just financial instruments and even technical platforms. They are just not possible for Russian entities and just juridical or physical ones. But anyway, we try to find a way out. And as far as the financial sphere is concerned, we have just a proposal to just set up specialized financial institutions and give them the priorities, the public priorities for their relations, for usage, different types of operations, and just also the priorities within logistics, insurance, and so on and so forth, just as not to interfere into the activity of the banks that are operating in dollars at the moment and in euro. The situation is changing, and as far as the US, there are some positive developments, but anyway, let's wait and see. But actually, we don't have any problems. More than that, our Russian entities just thinking about the future of ameliorating the situation with the US, for example, and some European countries, because actually they have the fundamental support from the Russian government, and that helped us to reach the goal of being the third in the purchasing power. Banks with Brics participation support activity just of in different branches of economy, and just it is indicated in a certain article of the Kazan Declaration that we should also be better involved into public-private partnership. Generally, it's a very important aspect, because in some of our countries within Brics platform, we have just a different even description of the public-private partnership, and this activity is not well harmonized. But anyway, just the instruments, financial instruments are successful for just different types of projects, such as development of transport infrastructure, then clean energy, environment protection, and just a lot of others that are of an interest of the countries. As far as public-private partnership, there is certainly an interest of public institutions and private ones to meet mutual interests in funds management and to reach the goals of economic development. Thus, we can use different types of activity. They are presented just on the screen, and just the project finance, syndicated loans, swaps, just on the public and private basis, there are of real interest, and insurance and reinsurance, as well as payments going through the central banks of our countries and through specialized payment systems. Any bank within its correspondent relations has its possibility for financial transfers in different routes, in different spheres, just having the facility of just the counterparts in friendly, let's put it like that, countries. So just we have some probably possibility just to develop the usage of ruble that is for 85% used in Eurasian Union. That is the union of the post-Soviet countries. So we are not thinking at the moment about a single currency, but anyway, the development of the local currencies as the currencies of contracts are met successfully by the interest of our countries. And just as far as the payment system is concerned, so the functioning rules, the operators should be authorized by public authorities, and there should be mutual requirements, not only for operators, but also for consumers, and general principles, mutual principles of supervision, just within the direct and indirect financing. As far as the direct financing, we have the ability of cooperation that was signed in 2017, but by our stock exchanges. So actually, we pay great attention to the partnership on new industrial revolution and the carbon-free energy production. That is really very important, and just within the Kazan Declaration, and it was mentioned that there is a necessity of a specialized industrial competence center for hydrogen production. Also, it is of an interest to the countries, and we consider it's very useful to go along the road of investments in carbon-free and carbon-neutral hydrogen, and to find some new types of energy production. Actually, we are preparing the presentation of some kinds of new energy production and the environment protection, and we'll certainly forward you the information about it in the nearest future. Actually, we are successful within the infrastructure development, and just infrastructure, it means the whole meaning of just activities along the road that was presented before, and the participation of our countries within the Northern Sea Route project is active, and it's really promising. I have already mentioned the necessity of harmonization of rules and regulations, and this is also indicated in the Kazan Declaration. Specifically, it should be just within the financial sphere, market operation, clearings, financial instruments and their usage, anti-corruption that we are speaking actually in Ranchi in India at the moment, then tax regulation, offshore activity, and probably its favorable monitoring and control, and the possibility of setting up such kind of just free economic zones, let's put like that, the offshore activities with participation of our member countries, just on the the monitoring of public relevant public institutions. We had such kind of an activity within the financial sphere during the Soviet period, and just our bank, I was honored to work with that bank, the Bank for Foreign Economic Relations and Bank for Foreign Trade of the USSR. So we had the affiliates in Luxembourg and Switzerland that helped us just to manage assets of the former USSR. So main activity should be within the sphere of cyber finance, and there are different types of cyber banking, and without regulation and harmonization, it could be just a mess and nothing else. So we consider that there are several important trends for cyber innovations concerning the artificial intelligence, also within the e-commerce and trade finance and so on and so forth. It will also be within the aspect of financial and functional risk management, financial risk management in particular. It's a challenge for all of our just member countries. The financial harmonization, as I have mentioned, within the market structure and its environment, operation procedures, financial reporting, financial supervision is extremely important at the moment, because without it, we cannot understand each other, and it will shorter anyway. The harmonization itself will shorter the period of taking decisions and fulfill operations. So our possible multinational projects could be within power engineering, communication, infrastructure development, agriculture development, water supply, and very important aspect is just the protection of our environment. We are thinking about the concept of long and short-term cross-border secure financial interaction. Then the international roster is quite necessary if we are speaking about artificial intelligence or cyber activity. It's not only within Brics platform, within Shanghai Commercial Organization and Eurasian Union and things like that. It's the community, the platform of our partner countries. That is the majority of the world, and the activity of our civilizations are very profound, and we are really just proud of it. We are thinking about the concept of a secure single site platform, just the development of Brics Stock Exchange, the development of the Brics investment platform, and suppose that the priorities for Brics and our partners' ecosystems will be reasonable at the contemporary period of our developments. So the success of Brics in general as the platform, and the partner countries, the developing countries, is backed on mutual respect, equality, sovereignty, and democratic approach to restructuring. And it should be consensus. So when we have our just meetings and thinking about proposals to declarations, there is a very important discussion take place for reaching the priorities and taking the consideration the interests of each country in provision all kind of administration and legal support and cooperation, and backed by the development of the local currencies as the currencies of the contracts. As far as the public-private partnership cooperation, it is at the moment very well developed. That gave us the possibility to overcome the difficulties of sanctions. Actually, we have 25,000 sanctions against Russia, and we are not suffering of it. The GDP, it's 4+ percent, and it's just the reason for the usage of public-private partnership in our cooperation. Thank you very much indeed. I tried to be short because in respect of all the presenters and the limited time of our webinar, I took my advantage to share some ideas and just to give you some probably facts for further developments. If there is anything, I will be happy to answer your questions on email, because actually I should chair one of the session that is taking place here in India, in Ranchi. And thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you, Prof. Irina, for the impressive outline of the innovative measures that Russia has taken to rise against potential debilitating sanctions and other measures against her. Also, more impressively, to look at the initiatives that Russia has taken to work cooperatively within the Brics bloc to advance the agenda towards economic growth and development. Thank you once again for availing yourself. I know you are cutting across other responsibilities in Ranchi in India. Unfortunately, we're not going to have you during the question and answer session, but nevertheless, we would share your email, and interested participants will liaise with you. And thank you for providing that platform for further collaboration. Thank you once again. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And I will really appreciate if there will be a possibility to have the presentations of our colleagues at my disposal, because it will give us possibilities to think about and to move forward with our proposals. Thank you greatly. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Fortune would share that with you via email. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, participants. Our next speaker is Professor Jingyang Zheng. He is a renowned scholar not only in China, but also internationally. From my last conversation with him, I think he was based at Lancaster and is returning soon to the City University of Hong Kong. But nevertheless, he has really an impressive and accomplished record as a researcher that has transgressed local boundaries, as well as engagements with various BRICS states. Over to you, Professor Jingyang Zheng. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are based. As was just mentioned, at the time when this event invitation come to me, I still worked in Lancaster University in the UK, and was a professor and also director of the Confucius Institute in Lancaster in the UK. And most recently, I have joined City University of London, in City University of Hong Kong, in its Department of Public and International Affairs. So you will see my updated emails here, and I would like to thank the organizer for inviting me, and I'm very honored to be part of this discussion on BRICS. I want to briefly reflect a bit about my perspective on China and BRICS and challenge or opportunity. I'm not sure how typical my view is from a Chinese perspective, but I think it's more about my own analysis of BRICS and where I think this might be going. So in the next 20 minutes time, I want to focus on two main things. The first one is a paper that I wrote it back in 2018 about my analysis of BRICS by then. And the second part of the presentation, I want to focus on my analysis of BRICS by now. And the reason I choose these two times is not only the first article I wrote by then was written at Trump's first term, but also now in Trump's second term, we have been seeing quite similar trends. So I think it'll be very helpful if we compare those two different periods and see what has changed and what hasn't, in order to provide us some clues to predict what might be happening in the future. So this paper that I wrote with Professor Mark Binson, and we discussed about China's contradictory role in BRICS and global governance in general. And the paper was published in 2018 in Third World Quarterly. At the time, we just saw Trump's first term, and a lot of things are very, very similar with what I've been saying now. So probably some of the points made by them will need some smile, and I think will be very helpful if we go back to the article to see what was argued by them and what I want to argue now in 2025. So first of all, in this paper, we ask several questions. I think 3 key questions. The first question is, will the global order prove sufficiently robust to maintain the kind of cooperation and coherence in the kind of face of growing international turbulence? By then, we mostly refer to Trump, and I think the same kind of factor were still there, and also the rise of China. And the second question we ask is, at the time of we have been seeing the very stability of the old order is now being challenged, mostly by the US. Can the BRICS maintain a unified position among themselves? And the third question we ask in this article is, can BRICS play a constructive role in preserving the foundation of good governance and to provide a kind of new emerging global order? So by then, my analysis with Mark in 2018, the answer was no. We do not think that the international order is robust enough to maintain cooperation and coherence. We do not think that BRICS will be able to maintain a unified position, and we do not think that they will be able to provide the expected constructive role by them. So I will explain why we argue that, and before I come into making what my analysis now in 2025. So first of all, when we talk about global governance, what do we mean by that? I mean, global governance mostly refers to the combination of formal and informal rules, norms, procedures, practice, policies, the kind of type of providing a kind of surprising, undesirable degree of global order, stability, and predictability. So there are 2 points here. First of all, is the very possibility of actually realizing something that is appropriate to global governance, right? For example, the global governance institutions has increased. Some would argue that actually it was the global governance institution that increased the chaos, randomness, fragmentation, ambiguity, which is a fair point making. At the same time, the global governance was essentially created under the American hegemony in the aftermath of Second World War with unique historical circumstances. That circumstances has mostly 2 things. First of all is a crisis of global capitalism after the Second World War, and the second one is the ideological and material challenge of the Soviet Union to the United States. That was when the US-led unilateral global order was made, was a historical circumstance of that. And obviously now is very different. And today here I refer to 2018 when the paper was written. But I think that was still very true as well. We are in a very different kind of circumstances of when the old global order was made. So it was not about, in the current situation, when we talk about contemporary times, it's not about whether states are capitalism or communists. But the sort of kind of capitalist economy or domestic governance practice which different states adopt. So many wouldn't consider the current Chinese system as a communist society. And in China, we call it socialism with Chinese characteristics, in which we recognize that we adapt the socialism into China's national condition. And in the West, many call the current Chinese economy as capitalism with state capitalism, for example, or state capitalist economy is kind of terms to use to refer to it. And when we come into the BRICS, we have seen the different kind of ideas about the best way to run an economy and the appropriate role of the state, but not looking to completely overturn the existing order. So if you really come deep into it, what kind of consensus that BRICS countries have, I think there is one thing we agree with each other within the liberal international order. That is, all BRICS countries agree that it's important to protect national sovereignty. And when you talk into that, you can also go back to the Chinese Premier's 5 principles of peaceful coexistence as a foundation of a distinctive alternative to the existing international order. But the question really by them is the principle compatible with a world in which the global forces and actors are undermining the traditional capacity and also power of individual states? So to all BRICS countries, including China, we have reason to the permanence under the American hegemony or the US-led international order, and still heavily relying on the aspects of the current international order created by the US hegemony. So it raises a question of what impact can BRICS have as a group or as a whole. And we point out that there is actually the lack of a BRICS blueprint of what BRICS want to achieve, what kind of coherent vision of where you want to go, where's the direction of travel. And if you compare that with Washington Consensus, you got a clear concept that you have a clear agenda that has enormous brand recognition. And its impact was reinforced by the powerful intergovernmental organization with political leverage and international organization or global governance institutions to implement those ideas. However, when it comes to the BRICS blueprint, does BRICS have one? I mean, one might point out to Beijing Consensus that also have some sort of brand recognition. But the question really with Beijing Consensus is even within China, there's no consensus about Beijing Consensus. And also, it's not endorsed officially by the Chinese government. This mostly the idea stands for pragmatism and also doing whatever works, rather than a very clear ideologically oriented concept like Washington Consensus. And also, there is a gap between what Beijing Consensus stands for and the reality of the Chinese economy. So many Chinese economists might argue that Beijing Consensus does not exist at all. And also, you can say that within the BRICS, it's not only one Beijing Consensus. You also have consensus from India as well, which potentially might serve as a competitor of Beijing Consensus. And when you come into BRICS Development Bank, I think this is something has scientifically developed in the past several years. So again, this was the point we made back in 2018. By then, we argue that this new institution has not achieved terribly much. And within China, China has its own rivalry institutions such as Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, the Belt and Road Initiative Plan, which you have multiple kind of initiatives competing with each other. You don't really see that kind of priority on this one. And also, we argue that BRICS has neither a coherent joint position on the natural or the shortcoming of the current international order, but no an alternative model or vision of alternative order. So even the grouping of BRICS, if you go back to the very beginning of it, how the idea and concept was created, some might argue it's kind of arbitrary and also rather accidental, instead of a scientific kind of measurements to say why this country is part of BRICS, that country is not, and what is a clear scientific measurements to decide who will be here and who will not be here. So the question is, what precisely is the purpose of the BRICS are, rather than being a group that are not very happy with the current international order. So we might find some shared common consensus among BRICS countries, for example, climate change, renewable energy, but mostly they are driven by different domestic priorities within those countries, not a global leadership. And also there are considerable amount of competition within BRICS countries as well. By then the paper was written, there wasn't a war between Russia and Ukraine. So we compare a bit about how Putin's Euro-Asia Economic Union in Central Asia is competing with Belt and Road Initiative, or we discussed a bit about Indians' dissatisfaction over China-Pakistan Economic Corridor and how India refused to join Belt and Road Initiative. And also by then, the paper was written in 2018, so there was a big thing about border disputes between India and China. Both sides had a very strong nationalistic media narrative about a potential war over this territorial disputes. And also, India played a key role in by then the U.S.-led Indo-Pacific strategy, which is going to contain China. I think obviously, probably looking from now, a lot of things might be dated because the U.S. might no longer continue its Indian Pacific strategy. Who knows what Trump might want to do about it. So in that paper, we also argue that, okay, so India and China are two emerging powers with potentially conflicting interests that are driven by powerful domestic and nationalistic forces combined with territorial disputes. Those are the structural kind of conflicts that might easily trump the desire to collaborate at global affairs within the Brics framework. So you see the kind of primary concern of this conflicting interest over sovereignty and geopolitical competition within the Brics country, and secondary concern of the Brics cooperative initiative, such as international development, cooperation, technological assistance to low-income countries. So, as Professor Sean Blessing summarized at Warwick, that the fundamental problem, as far as the Brics are concerned, is that while the Brics states might agree on something they don't like, or something they are dissatisfied with, there does not seem to be a shared vision of what a radically different world order might look like now. That probably is a key challenge we have been seeing now with Brics. And the Brics increasingly now have power and capacity to undermine the current form of broadly liberal governance, but with little ability or interest develop an alternative or real alternative to the current international order. So by then we conclude that this is going to become a multipolarity without multilateralism. This would mean a redistribution of power within international system, but it might be the one that make collective actions via the multilateral institutions, making the multilateral institutions increasingly difficult. So it is a world in which neither the interests of the US nor its potential increasingly powerful rivalry can be certain to advance their interests. So when facing the decline of American global leadership, many now are looking into China. But I think it remains to see whether China is capable or is China willing to act to fill the leadership vacuum. But we conclude that by then, Brics as a whole probably will be very difficult to do that. And the prospects for effective global governance looks remote at the time. So that was the analysis back in 7 years ago. Obviously, things are very different, but things are very similar. As we all know, now Trump is back and bringing something very different and very interesting. We have seen the same kind of American attitude and leadership and views on how the world order should look like, and the same view on globalization, very similar view on American leadership. So we believe that quite a lot of arguments by them stands. However, having said that, a lot of things are very, very different now than 7 years before. The elephant in the room, obviously, is Brics are no longer several countries, right? It has now significantly expanded its membership into something different. We got new members like Egypt, Iran comes into it. It's a move towards a global South and Middle East platform. But I think the question also raised here is about identity. What are now the new identity for the Brics? I think there is something still need to be worked on. And again, even in the old Brics with only several countries, there is some issue with coherence and also decision making. And now with the expansion of membership, how are we going to overcome the issue of coherence and decision making within a more ideologically and geographically diverse group? I think that is something needs to be looked into and addressed. And the second key variable is a greater political and strategic assertion now than 7 years ago. We have seen a more sharper anti-Western tones, especially following Russia's war in Ukraine, US-China tension, and more polarized global order. And Brics become now more of a platform to contest the Western dominance in global governance, finance, and security. And also there is a bigger push to de-dollarization. Alternative financial architecture have gained momentum, though limited impact has been achieved. The third key variable is economic dynamics and divergence. We have seen the increasingly Chinese dominance and Russian economy become more isolated because of war and sanction. We got a new member bring capitals and energy that change the dynamics economic dynamics within the group. And the fourth variable is institution development, which is slow but evolving. We have seen the new development bank starting to lending in local currency, increasing emphasis on creating alternatives to Western financial system, but internal governance and institutional coordination remain very weak, especially with addition of ideologically diverse new members comes in with this significant expansion. And also global perception and relevance is also a key variable. We have seen that now Brics now viewed as a symbol of global South frustration with the West, more vocal, more verbal, more ambitious, but also much more fragmented. So its relevance in global geopolitics has significantly increased, but not necessarily its effectiveness or its unity. So to conclude my presentation, I think I was quite pessimistic back in then 2018, and now slightly more optimistic or less pessimistic in 2025. I was very pessimistic because I see Brics as a loosely aligned group with more rhetoric than action. The blocs struggled with those internal disparity, reliance on Western financial system, a lack of coherent strategy. However, now things are very different. We have seen Brics has evolved into a more purposeful coalition, advancing financial inclusion through digital payments, innovation, local currency trade, and new development bank. Some of those topics has been covered by the previous two presentation. I believe will be covered by the following presentation as well, which I'm very much looking forward to hearing more about this topic. And also I have seen the expansion to include new members that bringing the kind of new dynamics, new momentum economically, offering tangible alternatives to Western-dominated institutions. Though some of the challenges still are there. For example, China's dominance, geopolitical tension, and how this can become a credible forces for a more multipolar global economy. So today, I believe that Brics is no longer just a talking shop. It's a platform to reshaping financial access and also economic cooperation for the Global South by promoting de-dollarization, supporting sustainable development, and fostering the fintech collaboration. The bloc is reducing dependency on traditional Western market and creating a more inclusive economic global order. So my skepticism has gradually fade away, and I hope that this is the right thing to do. If the Brics continue the path, I believe that it will have a very important role to redefine global economic governance, ensuring emerging economy have a strong voice. And the journey from doubt to beliefs reflect the Brics' growing relevance and its potential to build a fair and more resilient world, which is more important than ever before. So I look forward to hearing more of the presentation following this and learn from colleagues from different countries about their views on this and how we can better develop Brics as a whole. Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to the discussion by the end of this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof, for that very impressive presentation. And I think what stands out is tracing that trajectory that's leading towards greater optimism and hope, but while at the same time recognizing that there is still work to be done in terms of managing inherent conflict, but also looking at the potential of using collective power towards achieving more resourceful outcomes that would strengthen collaboration, cohesiveness, and cooperation. Thank you for that. We would now move on to Professor Mbandla from the Durban University of Technology, who is a renowned scholar in public management, but also focuses on IDR and MDR research within the local and international terrain. Over to you, Prof. Mbandla. Thank you.
Morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever colleagues might be. Thank you very much, Prof, for giving me this opportunity. Thanks, Dr. Mangari. So I don't know if you want me to share, Dr. Mangari, or to share the presentation. Oh, thank you. If you can make it much bigger. Thank you very much, colleagues. I just prepared one slide here, which will cover everything that I want to talk about. And also, I don't think I will spend much time talking, but I will also expect colleagues to deliberate on what the presenters have spoken about and also on what I will be talking about. Well, as the topic suggests, colleagues, it says leveraging collective strength for a resilient global economy. Where I'm seated, I think it is very important to mention that when we talk about the global economy and we talk about Brics economy, we need to understand that the main purpose of the collaboration between all the Brics countries, Brics plus nation countries, is to address the issue of the global economy. And that is why at the beginning there in my introduction, I said the overview of the Brics as an economic deon, which means that Brics aspire to be the economic powers to challenge the status quo, particularly to challenge the narrative that is being presented by the Global South, by countries in the West against the Global South. And also, it is very important to ensure that there is a collaboration amongst different countries. What really become a concern for me as someone who is in South Africa is the fact that amongst all the partners, South Africa is the smallest country in terms of the population. And then if you look at the number of countries that are in Brics and the population size of all those countries, they are quite very huge compared to South Africa. In fact, all of them can actually multiply South Africa twice or more than 2 times in number. So it means that there must be a clear collaboration in ensuring that the economic challenges globally are being addressed properly, also taking into consideration the issue of the size of the country amongst all the Brics plus nations that are working together to ensure that the economy is favorable to Brics plus nations. And again, if you look at the perspectives from Brics there, I will just go according to the numbers. I have number 1 to 4. So there are 4 things that I will be talking about. I will speak about the perspectives currently that are being narrated when it comes to Brics. Now we talk about the sustainable development and economic diversity. So the main purpose at this point is to ensure that all the countries that are within Brics plus nations are at a developmental stage. They are all developing. They don't want to see a situation where a country is not developing, which is part of the Brics plus nations. So this is the main agenda that is being driven by these countries. And then what is also, I think, is very important is what we call fintech and digital banking for financial inclusion. At this point, we have some systems that are being used globally in terms of making payments. And I think it's very important for Brics plus nations to develop their own system or their own financial banking system or method that will be much easier without a lot of charges when especially countries within Brics plus nations are doing some transactions. Whether they are doing business, whether they are traveling or whatever that they do, there must be a fintech, which is a financial technology system that is going to be favorable to Brics plus nation countries. So I think especially Brazil need to, because I think all countries must be able to address on a specific issue rather than having all countries dealing with everything at once, which at some point might not produce the favorable results. So I think it's important for Brics countries to ensure that they assign duties and responsibilities to different countries so that when they meet in various platforms, especially in summits, all countries are able to report on the progress that has been made on the assignment that was given to a particular country. And then I think maybe when you look at what is happening currently in Russia, Russia is very good in energy cooperation, infrastructure development. And I think South Africa should be able to learn from what Russia is doing, and not just South Africa, but all countries in BRICS plus nations should be able to take a cue on what Russia is doing. And Russia is as well should be willing to share some ideas, assist those who need some assistance, not just financially, but also the sharing of skills, or the transfer of skills to those who might need that particular skill, especially in South Africa. And then also the issue of the expansion of trade partnerships. I know at this point there are so many issues in relation to the Russia economy. I know the speaker that spoke earlier on touched on this one. And I think it's also very important to have a look at what partners can be initiated to ensure that the economy of Russia is booming, and also Russia is able to assist BRICS plus nations to ensure that the economy is developing. Then when we look at South Africa, regional integration and intra-Africa trade development should be something that I think South Africa should be focusing on at this point, and also to ensure that the financial strategies are able to include all the communities, which includes the marginalized communities in South Africa, and also share some ideas on how that can be done in other countries as well. Now, without even having to mention all the countries there, and also because in BRICS now we don't just have BRICS, but we have BRICS plus nations. So I had to touch base on the three for now. And then moving to number two, there are common challenges and collective solutions that I think should be the primary focus for BRICS plus nations. Number one, the issue of the income inequality and wealth distribution. It is an open secret that countries such as South Africa and Brazil have a high level of income inequalities. Those who are poor are very much poorer, and those who are rich are very much rich or richer. So it's very important to address those disparities before even having to look at the global economy, and also address the much bigger issues of the global communities. I think those countries need to address the income inequalities first, and the wealth distribution before having to attend to this problem at a much bigger scale. And also the issue of the geopolitical and economic universalities become a major problem within BRICS. And I think these are the issues that must be attended to by BRICS plus nations, to ensure that the issue when, for example, South Africa have a conflict with neighboring countries, BRICS should be able to have a position. Not saying that they will interfere in terms of trying to resolve the war or a fight or a conflict, but there should be a position that each and every country within BRICS is taking to ensure that they are protecting the interest of South Africa, for example, in this case, and also to ensure that there is a proper and good relationship moving forward. And also the issue of trade. I think enhancing trade, investment, and technology transfer among BRICS nations become a major problem. I'm raising this simply because if you look at China, for example, China is doing very well when it comes to issues of technology. They are doing very well. But also India, if you look at India in terms of science, technology, mathematics, engineering, India is also doing very well. I'm not saying that other countries are not doing well, but those skills and those expertise should be shared amongst all the BRICS plus nation countries to ensure that all these skills are equitable. Then number three, the issue of the new development bank, it has been an issue for quite some time. And I think at this point, we shouldn't be talking about this issue as BRICS plus nations. We should be looking at how this is being implemented properly to ensure that countries that are suffering financially, or they need a loan or financial assistance, are easily able to access money from the new development bank, and also being assisted in terms of developing some businesses or any financial sustainable project should easily be funded by the new development bank. And also the issue of the cross-border digital payments, which is something that I touched base earlier on. We are currently still using the same old method of sending money or making payments, which is not favorable to BRICS Plus nations. It is still benefiting the West and those who have been in the economic sector for quite some time, which is very selfish in approach because they just want to benefit. They don't want to do anything that will actually be seen as a loss. And at this point, BRICS Plus nation is seen as the threat by the West. So there's no way that the West will be favorable to any country that is associated with BRICS Plus nations. And the issue of bilateral and multilateral trade agreements must also be taken into consideration, especially if we can reduce the barriers that are in place or trade barriers that are in place. It shouldn't be a problem for someone from South Africa to do business with anyone in any country that is classified as BRICS Plus nation country. So it should be very, very much easier for someone from Russia, from Brazil, to do business with people from South Africa without having to associate themselves with any political organization or any agenda, but it shouldn't be a problem or a barrier. The issue of income inequality is also another problem, as I indicated earlier on. I think the table there or the graph there clearly indicates where we are in terms of the income inequality. At this point, BRICS alone constitute 40% of the global population and then 25% of the GDP. So it means that if you look at the global economy, BRICS have so much power. And remember, China and India are the highest populated countries globally. So it means that we are doing well in terms of taking advantage of the fact that BRICS constitute of 40% of the entire population globally and 25% of the GDP. So there's no balance between the population rate and also the GDP. And I think we need to ensure that at least you are focusing on the issue of the GDP and improve in that area. And number 4, which is the initiatives for financial inclusion and economic cooperation. We also have to make sure that we are taking into cognizance the issue of reshaping the global financial governance. We cannot just develop some new systems without having governance systems in place. How are we going to ensure that there's proper governance, there's no corruption, there's no money laundering, there's no any other unethical activities that are taking place when the issues of finance are being taken into account by the BRICS Plus nations. And the cooperation with emerging economies and developing nations, we also need to make sure that as South Africa, we cooperate with BRICS Plus countries and also mobilize the emerging economies, those who identify with what BRICS is saying or what we believe in as BRICS community. We must also promote the inclusive global trade policies. Now, the issue now as well is with regards to the policies that are in place, financial policies in particular, whereby countries are independent countries even within BRICS because the financial policy of a country supersedes any financial activity that must take place in that particular country, and also the relationship between people from that particular country with other countries. So the financial policies or global trade policies should be relaxed to ensure that there is a proper inclusion of the BRICS agenda in financial activities. And also the issue of sustainable development as a principle. So it shouldn't be just a talk to talk about sustainable development. It should be a matter of principle, whereby we are making sure that there is financial sustainability, there is infrastructural sustainability at all times. So countries should be able to help one another without having to expect that particular country that is suffering to make some financial payments, but BRICS Plus nation countries should be able to help one another at all times to ensure that the sustainability is well monitored and is also encouraged and supported. in conclusion, okay, in fact, there are some insights when it comes to BRICS Plus nations that I've made over the past few years. But I think for at this point, my main focus or my main concern is on the global economy, whereby it seems like even the BRICS Plus nations are trading very carefully when it comes to the global economy. They are not robust. They are not taking the bull, pulling the bull by its horns to ensure that the Western regimes are able to feel the existence of the BRICS Plus nation at all costs without having to feel compromised. I think BRICS Plus nations should do more to ensure that they are disrupting the status quo when it comes to the global economy. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Professor Mbandla. It was quite impressive to note the opportunities that you raised in terms of potential for cooperation that exists, leading to greater resilience within the global economy. Very insightful comments as well. Our last speaker for today. Sorry, somebody needs to mute herself. Our last speaker for today is Professor De Conti from Brazil, a specialist in economics. I think he's still based on a staff mobility program in Paris. That's one of the many programs that he has successfully engaged in globally and quite an active member within the BRICS Institute. Prof. De Conti, over to you.
Great, thanks, Professor Nirmala, for the invitation. It's a great pleasure for me to be here with you today, and also to take part in this initiative of the Durban University of Technology, which is a university which is very important for all activities related to the BRICS. Let me try to share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes, Prof.
Great. Okay, so what I'm going to discuss with you today is one of the aspects which I study more in relation to the BRICS, which is the monetary and financial cooperation, the possibilities for it, the efforts, the challenges, and especially in this context of geopolitical tensions. I've been studying this topic for a while now, actually since my PhD thesis, which I defended in 2011. I mean the International Monetary and Financial System. And for all those who studied, we can see that finally the changes at the International Monetary System are very, very slow. So it's sometimes it can be even annoying to study it because you don't see many changes in the short term. But then in this particular moment in our history, we do see some movements which make it more interesting to go deep and see the possibilities for change. And then I would say that, well, these geopolitical tensions, and especially the fact that the US is more explicitly using the US dollar as a weapon, is one of the things that is causing reactions. And then many of the speakers who preceded me already mentioned that, but also the digitalization of currencies. Actually, the International Monetary Fund is saying that we are living now a money revolution. This is how they name it, because precisely we have this trend of digitalization in all aspects of society and economy, but specifically for money, it may provoke some important changes. So the outline of my presentation is this one. I'm gonna very quickly talk about the current international monetary and financial system and its asymmetries, then the initiatives of the BRICS to change it. And then I'll try to concentrate myself in the CBDC, the central bank digital currencies, and the mBridge project before going into my final remarks. You all know about, well, some of the important roots of the current international monetary and financial system we have nowadays. So I won't go deep on that, but I think it's important for us to start a discussion to be totally aware that, well, the system which we have now was created by the US, right? So it's an important axe for its hegemony. Actually, some of my colleagues also mentioned that, and it was created by the US, obviously in relation, in interaction with many other countries. But then if we come to the Second World War, we had the Bretton Woods Conference, which was held in the US, not by chance, and then important discussions on how they should shape the new international monetary system. Some proposals by John Maynard Keynes, the UK representative, which proposed a supranational currency, right? A very interesting proposal. Very hard to be done politically speaking, but well, very interesting proposal, and it was refused by the US precisely because they wanted to have their currency as the key currency of the world. So, and then later on, in 71, I won't go into details again, but as you know, well, the US started somehow exaggerating, let's say, in the issuing of external liabilities in US dollar, and then some distrust in the dollar started to appear, because in principle the US dollar should have gold as a back, but then it was very clear for the whole world that the US didn't have gold as a back for their external liabilities. And then many persons, including Charles de Gaulle, the then French president, started questioning let's say the stance of the US in regard to the international monetary system. And then what Nixon, then president of the US, did, instead of trying to change internally the domestic policies in the US, he just and unilaterally declared the end of the convertibility of the US into gold. So if the Bretton Woods system in principle was, well, an agreement signed by 44 countries, then the US alone ended it with that by declaring the end of the convertibility of the US into gold. So again, it's just to show that, well, this important change which was made in early 70s, which the end of the Bretton Woods system, was again a change made by the US. So they shaping the international monetary system as they want for their hegemony, right? And then again, many examples. Well, in 73, amidst the uncertainties related to the US, they made an important agreement with Saudi Arabia for the nomination and settlements of oil barrels in US dollar in exchange of military defense. And it's an important moment because it shows very clearly the relation between this triad, so currency with energy and with army, right? So at the end of the day, the military power is important for the determination of an international currency. And then in 79, they did a very conservative monetary policy, the Volcker's strong dollar policy. So at the end, they even with the uncertainties related to the US dollar, they made some internal and external policies that managed to keep the US dollar as the key currency of the world. Well, you all know about this fact, but here this table can just show you to what extent this dominance exists, right? So for the share of global foreign exchange markets, I don't know if you know those numbers, but almost 90%, actually 88% of all operations in all foreign exchange markets in the whole world have in one of the sides of the operation the US dollar, 90%, 88 actually. So it's really completely a complete domination, right? And then if we go into the Brics currencies, the original Brics, the renminbi is 7%, much below the 15 to 20% of as a share of the GDP that China has nowadays, right? And then for rupee, it's 2%. For Brazilian real and South African rand, it's only 1%. And for ruble, it used to be 1% as well, but then with the sanctions, it's 0. And then this asymmetry. So the international monetary system is completely asymmetric, as you know, and these asymmetries have important implications, starting with the macroeconomic implications. This is what Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, then Minister of Finance of Charles de Gaulle, precisely in this moment of questioning the hegemony of the US dollar in the 60s to 70s, coined this expression, the exorbitant privilege, right? So the US can run current account deficits for decades and decades without any problem. They have much less problems to have expansionary fiscal policy. They don't have many problems with changes in the exchange rate. And for the peripheral countries, it's the opposite. So in Brazil, in South Africa, we have problems related to the volatility of our exchange rate. We have problems because our monetary policy is completely implied in the effort to contain this volatility of the exchange rate. So at the end of the day, the interest rates are very volatile as well. We have much less room for economic policy as a whole. But then besides these macroeconomic policies, and then we can go into the details later if you want, but then beyond the macroeconomic policies, there are political problems related to the hegemony of the US dollar because money is power, as you all know. And then going directly to the last line of my slide, the weaponization of the international monetary and financial system is not at all a new thing. Obviously, the US has always used its currency as a weapon, but it's currently more clear because precisely of the sanctions in regard to a very important country in the world, which is Russia, right? But then we can also see political problems in other dimensions of the modus operandi of the international monetary and financial system. And then starting with the very classic thing, which is the veto power that the US still has at the International Monetary Fund. So for important decisions at the International Monetary Fund, it's necessary to have, as you know, 85% of the votes. And then the US alone has 17%. And even if some reforms have been done recently, they never abandon this veto power that they still have. So it's completely a shame, right? And the European Union altogether, they also have more than 15%. And the good news is that nowadays, with the expansion of Brics, Brics together, all countries together, also have more than 15%. So now Brics together, expanded Brics, Brics Plus, also has veto power at the IMF, which may create, which may increase the bargaining power, right? Also the conditionalities, the impositions that are made by the IMF, the World Bank, in the whole world in terms of reforming the labor market, reforming the pension system, and so on and so forth. Those are all examples of this political power which those countries have, using the current structure of the international monetary and financial system, which was designed, shaped by the US. I always insist on that. And then, so it's more than time for us to try to change it, and the BRICS countries are aware of it. And in order to try to face these asymmetries, there is the possibility of national policies searching for some autonomy, so increasing international reserves, having some modalities of capital control. Or we have the possibility of collaboration with other global south countries, right? And then for national initiatives, we also have these very important initiatives in China for the internationalization of the Chinese renminbi, with even advertisements, you probably saw it already, and the digital yuan, which is a very important topic nowadays. I'll come back to that at the end of my presentation. So this is really important, even if I think, and this is at least the discourse of the Chinese government, that they don't want to replace the dollar, right? They just want to have a world with pluri-currency system, let's put it like that. So reducing the dependency of the US dollar. But then what is more important for us in our discussion here are the initiatives of the BRICS together, right? And then we can also have bilateral initiatives of some of the BRICS countries, and then the sanctions on Russia have strengthened those bilateral initiatives, because obviously the Chinese international payment system is being widely used by Russia, and it's interesting to see that this new system created by China was capable of absorbing an economy as big as the Russian economy, right? And nowadays, something like 90% of the trade between Russia and China are settled in renminbi, increasing from 3% only in 2014, as you can see. And then there are initiatives. The Russian banks are issuing credit cards linked to Union Pay. For the China-Russia relations, it increased a lot after the sanctions, right? But then we have some other bilateral initiatives within BRICS countries. I can mention my country, Brazil, with China, for instance. We have a new agreement for bilateral trade in national currencies, but it's still not being used as one should expect. So it was signed in 2023. But only very few operations are made in the national currencies. We have, as you know, the BRICS contingent reserve arrangement, which is in principle an interesting tool, but which was never used by the BRICS. It's also interesting to highlight it. Even South Africa, for instance, had to get some loans from the IMF in 2020 for the pandemic, and then it got from the IMF instead of getting it from the contingent reserve arrangements, right? So it's something that is used in the BRICS, and then I'm taking part in the discussion, in some discussions related to the Brazilian chairmanship of the BRICS this year. And then one of the things they want to deliver as a result is a reform of the contingent reserve arrangements. I don't know the details, but this is something that they realized that it's underused. It should be strengthened. Then there are discussions about the BRICS credit rating agencies. There are divergences within the group. But in my opinion, this is something important to be done, because as we know, the credit rating agencies, they are totally the important ones. They are dominated by Western countries, and they are political agencies, right? They try to sell the idea that they are technical agencies, but at the end, they are trying to push for a certain way of making economic policies that, is Western oriented, right? So I do think that in this effort to change the international monetary and financial system, it's important to strengthen other credit rating agencies in the BRICS countries, or even having one BRICS credit rating agency. Then the new development bank, you all know it, I don't have to go into the details, but the effort is precisely to having a bank more symmetrics, so respecting national sovereignty. It's interesting to see that even a BRICS bank has many obstacles to provide loans in the national currencies. Since the beginning, the target was 30%, but it was never met, this target. So most of the loans provided by the NDB are still in US dollars. But since the beginning of the presidency of Dilma Rousseff in the bank, she's really trying hard to increase. And the last results from last year are good results in this sense, especially South Africa. I don't know the reason. It's something I'd like to learn. Maybe someone here knows, but in South Africa, it was possible for the NDB to provide loans in rents, which is a very good news. So it is slightly changing. Let me just control my time. Okay, I have 5 minutes. An important thing for the discussions related to the international monetary and financial system is precisely that there is this relation between energy and currency, and army as well, if you want to include it. But sticking in the energy and currency now, the new BRICS, the BRICS Plus, controls, as you know, something like 40% of the provision of energy in all kinds of modalities. So either oil, gas, green energy, very importantly because of China, but also Brazil and Russia. Nowadays, the BRICS together control at least 40% of the provision of energy in all those types of energy. And then obviously it creates the possibility of policies related to this dialogue, to this relation between energy and currency. The best example is the possibility of exporting the energy in Chinese renminbi or in the new BRICS currency if it comes to be created. Very unlikely it will be, but still, this is something to be explored by the BRICS countries as well. BRICS currency, just a few words. Hot debates, right? Especially starting in Joburg, in the summit in Joburg 2 years ago. But then it is, I don't know if you agree with me, it's losing importance in the discussions, at least in the Brazilian chairmanship. People are not talking anymore about a BRICS currency because they realize it's a very complex thing. But it's a pity, in my opinion. In my opinion, at least some working groups, it's creating a currency is not something that can be done in 1, 2, or 3 years. It's something which takes time. But at least having discussions about that, having working groups working on that, in my opinion, would be a good idea. Obviously, not to replace the national currencies, but something for the trade, for the economic operations between BRICS countries, right? And then there are technical details. We can discuss it later. There are political problems, but in my opinion, we should at least keep it in the table, discussions about it in the table. But the Kazan declaration has no mention to it, and the Brazilian chairmanship is not having it as an important topic. And then I arrive to the last part of my presentation. I'll try to be quick. Which are the possibilities open, in my opinion, and then Professor Irina also mentioned that, brought by the digitalization of currencies, right? Currently, more than 130 countries in the world are studying or developing a central bank digital currency. An important exception is the US. I won't go into the details, but they were late in the development, in the studies about a digital dollar. In 2022, Biden made a White House official order to ask for urgency for the studies about the digital dollar. But then Trump, in the 4th day of his new mandate, in January 23rd, he made a new White House executive order revoking Biden's one and forbidden the development of a digital dollar in the US. Okay, so he's betting in the development, in the digitalization of money in the private sphere, right? So the digital assets, as you know. Europe is in between, and China is in the avant-garde of this process among the powerful countries, right? So as you know, they already have a digital yuan, which is being tested all over the country, in many cities in the country. It can be used by non-residents as well. The idea is that it will be used by non-residents as well. It can foster the internationalization of the renminbi. And a very important project related to that, in my opinion, is the mBridge project, because there are dozens of projects for cross-border payments in CBDCs. CBDCs were in principle created for internal usage, as you know, but more and more there are projects related to cross-border payments in CBDCs. Most of the projects are dominated by global north countries, but the mBridge project is a very interesting project because it has 5 full members from the global south, so China, Hong Kong, Thailand, Saudi Arabia, and the Emirates. And the whole idea is providing the possibility of payment in the national currencies. Actually, the usage of the US dollar is forbidden by definition, by design, of alien currencies. It's by design forbidden. So the idea is fomenting the usage of the national currencies. And it is being successful in the tests, providing fast, cheap payments in the national currencies. There are doubts related to the foreign exchange, so how to make the exchange of these currencies. So there is many things to be discussed. But the very good thing, in my opinion, is that all full members are from the Global South. And there is a political issue which happened last year, which is very important for our discussions. The Bank for International Settlements, they were part of this project, but they withdrew from the project in October 24. I don't know if you heard about it. It was very close to the Kazan summit in Russia. And what they allegated is that, well, the project reached a minimum viable status, so the monetary authorities of the 5 countries can now work by themselves. So the BIS is not anymore needed. That was the official allegation. But I've been making many interviews for the researchers I'm doing here in France about it. And there is a kind of a consensus in the backgrounds that at the end of the day, it was a political decision from the BIS. Actually, they withdrew because they realized that the Enbridge project can be used as a geopolitical tool for de-dollarization. And it is, and it can. So the BIS didn't want to be involved in that, so they withdrew, with what, in my opinion, it may be seen as a good thing, because then more than ever, it can be used as a geopolitical tool. So my opinion is that the Brics could use it. I'll come back to that. My final remarks, well, there are important challenges in this effort to change the IMFS inertia, which is a component of the IMFS always. What our Chinese colleague was saying, keeping a harmonic equal power in spite of the economic heterogeneities, it's always a challenge, dealing with internal divergences, dealing with the reactions, right? The US will react, is reacting. Trump already said he would impose 100% tariffs for countries willing to de-dollarize the world economy, right? And one important thing is that we have to deal with this new paradigm of digitalization when discussing this possibility of transforming the international monetary and financial system. And then I come back to the idea of the CBDCs and Enbridge. In my opinion, technological changes are not in itself sufficient to dethrone the US dollar. But we live in a moment in which I named it in a paper as a 3-layered movement related to the IMFS, because we have a big shift in the role of some countries in the world economy, China, first of all. We have rising geopolitical tensions, the US using its currency as a weapon. So at the end, we have a political disposition of many countries in the world to individually or in concert reduce their dependency on the US dollars. So very likely for the creation of the new cross-border payment systems for CBDCs, there will be a kind of a fragmentation with some systems trying to foster precisely the national currencies. I don't think that this will mean the end of the dollar's dominance, because the dollar's hegemony is based in many other things, including military power, but also, and very importantly, the role of the US financial market for the world. And this is unquestionable, actually, nowadays. The US financial market is by far the most important in the world. China is still, in this sense, lag behind. Also, for political decisions, the Chinese economy is more closed, right? So I don't think the US dollar will, the dollar's dominance will come to an end. But I think that, well, there can be an increase in payments being done for commerce in national currencies, specifically in some regions of the world, in Asia and maybe within Brics countries. So it's a moment in which we can increase the payments in national currencies. And this is a personal opinion. I do think that the Brics should join the Enbridge. It's a possible, interesting way of fostering these transformations in the international monetary and financial system. As far as it's not a Chinese bridge, it is a system collectively built and governed by the Global South countries. And I finish here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Bruno. A very, very insightful presentation. I think more especially you've drawn attention to the diverse existing financial and associated asymmetric conditions impacting. But despite that, I think you also drew attention to the imperative to not only stabilize local financial situations, but also to look at the potential for a Brics currency, or even opportunities to move away from the US-dominated SWIFT system of payment. Plenty of opportunities, and I think hope, like our previous speakers have raised, in terms of opportunities for us to strengthen our ties on the Brics arena. Dear attendees, presenters, and other esteemed guests, we've now reached the end of the presentations, and we're now going to open up for questions and answers. But before I move on to that, I think now we're going to move on to just raising your hand and providing your area of inquiry. But before we move on to that, we've had two questions, one from Arena, and there's another from Soraya Bukes. Arena, would you like to just read out your question?
Thank you
I think
so
you've
much.
got two. Thank you, Arena.
Thank you so much, Professor Dorasamy from DUT. Yes, I do have two. The first question is mostly towards all panelists. Apologies, I came in late. But my first question, just to summarize, is that we have this inherent fascination with tariffs and the climate of trade wars going on at the moment, and that, but the more insidious practice is that of standards and what happens to trade in that regard. So in this context, what is Brics doing, to improve market access in the form of investing in the areas of non-tariff barriers that affect each other in that regard? And I mean, for African countries specifically, and as South Africa explains its role in the broader trade compact and how it wants to be this kind of, not necessarily its voice for Africa, but allow opportunities for African countries in this regard. What is South Africa doing to improve this kind of relationship within the Brics, but that kind of sentiment as well? And then I was very impressed by Prof. De Conte's presentation. Every single time I hear him speak, it's amazing. But in terms of accessing local currency loans from the NDB, you did mention that you're unsure exactly why some countries have been slow on the uptake. My understanding is that it is on the onus of the country to specify what currency they want the loan in from the NDB, but can you also share a few of the barriers that could possibly be for the bank in accessing local currency loans? Thanks so much.
Should I do it now, or we get more questions? It's really up to you. Maybe I can do it now, right?
Prof.
Okay.
De Conte, you can proceed.
Up to you.
Thank you.
Okay. For the first question, so I'll leave to my colleagues, because then the second was specifically addressed to me. And it's a good question because I didn't have time to explore it, but now it's time for it. Actually, for all multilateral development banks, there are important obstacles to lend in local money, because there are two possibilities of doing that. One is money already in local currency, okay? Because when they raise funds, normally they raise funds in the international capital markets, so they raise it in dollars, because normally it's less expensive, right? But if they want to lend, for instance, in South Africa, they have two possibilities. Either they raise money, they raise funds already in South African rand, or they raise money in dollar, they raise funds in dollar, and they provide the loans in South African rand, but then the banks, the multilateral banks, have to keep the exchange rate risk, because then they will have liabilities in dollar and assets in South African rands, right? And then For the first choice, the problem is that normally raising funds in local currency is more expensive because the interest rates in the peripheral countries tend to be much higher. In Brazil, in South Africa, I don't know the level, maybe you can make that later, but 14% a year. You can raise money in dollars, I don't know, percent in Brazilian reals. The basic interest rates is 14% a year. This is the interest rate of our public bonds, which tend to be the floor for the interest rates, right? So if the NDB wants to provide loans in Brazil, either they raise funds in Brazil, but then they will have 14% a year the cost. So when they provide loans, they have to provide it at least with 14% a year, which is a very high cost for companies or public sector, which is getting this loan. Or they have to incur in deficits. So the NDB, the New Development Bank, will have to incur in deficits. So it raises money 14% a year, then it lends 5% a year, but then it has huge deficit, right? And then it will be a big problem for the rating it will receive, the New Development Bank will receive from the credit rating agencies, right? So here I can highlight also something. The NDB is a political bank, in my opinion. It's the Brics Bank should be a political bank, but it's a bank. And then it's also, it has to shape its operation to the constraints provided by the International Monetary and Financial System, including the rates provided by the credit rating agencies, the CRA. So in this, coming back, this possibility, raising money in national currencies, it's very expensive, or they raise it in dollars, but then they will have the exchange rate risk, which will also be a problem for the NDB in the rating it will receive from the credit rating agencies. So in both possibilities, it may create a problem for the ratings it receives. That's why normally it raises money in dollar, then it provides loans in dollars, and then the exchange rate stays with the actors which are receiving the loans. That's the point. I hope I was clear enough.
Thank you for that clarity, Prof. Bruno. With regard to Arena's second question, it's on the chat with regard to exports from Africa related to quality standards and a sense of protectionism. Would any of the presenters like to respond to that? Thank you. Before we move on to Suraya, question on de-dollarization.
No, there must be a free movement of goods from Africa to the member countries of BRICS. That's one way, I think, of improving the relationship. Why should we impose tariffs? Why can't we bring it down to zero tariffs? If we bring it down to zero tariffs, the African bloc, or I should say the BRICS bloc, its competitiveness will enhance, will increase. That is one. Number two, its exports or production will become cheaper and it can go to other countries. Number three, those who live in BRICS countries, they'll get things at the right rates, I think, optimum rates. So something, that's the positive way. One is that BRICS should not only be meeting annually, BRICS should hammer out a program of action. And that program of action, I think, should be solid in terms of free movement of goods, free movement of people, and free movement of capital. These are three very important things. If these three things happen, then BRICS will develop very, very fast. No doubt about it.
Thank you for that response, Professor Mishra. Are there any presenters that would like to respond to Arena's question? Okay, if not, we will move on to Suraya. Suraya, you can proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Durasamy. Yes, Prof. Bruno, I would like to know, because, we have had serious activism in Brics about de-dollarization. But what I hear from you is now a more amicable situation on how we are going to not move away from the dollar, but more to dovetail our SWIFT and whatever transactions we have. Now, I come from a social justice background, right? I don't come from a capitalist background, which is what your presentation seeks in economics. When I look at the social justice approach, we cannot have the status quo as it is today on the dominance of the dollar. And yes, we are sitting in a quandary at the moment of all the tariff hikes and the capricious attitude of America in those tariffs. We cannot now start backtracking on the Brics power block, because we are a huge power block. And we cannot not dictate pace to the world. The UN hasn't helped us. The UN has dovetailed into the America's policies. We as Brics, as a power block, we are moving away from that. And I would like to see, how are we going to de-dollarize, and not to get scared because the Americas is telling us, if you dare de-dollarize or dare go into advocating for that, then we're going to come after you. I don't think that we should buckle under that kind of rhetoric. I think that we should make our strengths known, as when it comes to the tariffs, when it comes to our bloc, the power that we hold in economic leverage. We cannot be dictated to looking at Africa's minerals, looking at how they've manipulated the gold price versus the dollar. We have the gold price at astronomical pricing at the moment per ounce, yet it does not strengthen the rand, where the gold comes from, because of the way economic policies have manipulated the capitalist world. How can, for simplification, you've got the minerals in your country, you've got the gold that is the most expensive commodity at the moment on your continent, but it does not help your currency. How can that, in economics, which is not my background, but how does that speak to, so my gold means nothing. It means nothing that it sits in Africa. It only means something if I attach it to a dollar rate. We need to get more clarity on that. Please, thank you, sir.
Great, very nice meeting you again, Soraya, and thank you very much for your reaction and questions. And actually, I couldn't agree more. Actually, I do think that, well, the world is full of asymmetries, but this asymmetry related to money, to currency, is a very important asymmetry, and we should struggle against it, right? I'm really frustrated when I see that sometimes the BRICS countries together, they have some rhetoric, but then at the end of the day, they do not go into, well, strongly in the direction of this effort of de-dollarization. So I couldn't agree more. And in this meeting I had for the Brazilian chairmanship, I very humbly tried to convince my government, I mean the Minister of Finance, to go into this direction. But it's true that that there are divergences between the countries, right? So China and Russia are more in favor of these strong actions for de-dollarization. Brazil and South Africa, I guess, are in an intermediate position. Lula, the president, is very much in favor, but then there are some constraints related to the Minister of Finance, for instance, for the effort to create a BRICS currency. And what I heard, the colleagues maybe can talk about that later, but what I hear always is that India is the country within the 5 original members which is less working for the dollarization. Because also it wants to have good relations with the US and so on. So apparently there are those divergences which somehow curb the process. But what we also have to understand is that at the end, a political is that's why in my 3-layered movement, I put the political will as the most important thing, because without political will, we won't struggle against dollarization. Or again, we struggle for de-dollarization, but we are all somehow in a kind of a dollar trap, as it's named by some. So even when we create policies for de-dollarization, sometimes they are not so effective as one could expect. So for the NDB, I already mentioned the problems related for the NDB to provide loans in other currencies. It's not so easy. There are technical problems. We have a good example is we have an agreement, Brazil-Argentina, for our trade to be done in national currencies, but only less than 5% of our bilateral trade, Argentina-Brazil, which are neighbor countries, is made in the national currencies. All the rest in dollars. Why? Because the companies, both the Argentinian and the Brazilian companies, when they export, they prefer to receive dollars, right? So we are all in this dollar trap. So it's a very complex thing, but I do think that we are in a moment with some movements, geoeconomic and geopolitical movements that allow us as a block of important countries to have this political will and to move ahead in the effort of de-dollarization rate.
Thank you for that exposition, Prof. De Conti. We move on to now Professor Peranmanov. You may proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Doraisamy. Thank you, presenters. It was indeed quite interesting to listen to what you expounded on regarding the process of economics and how it unfolds. My concern primarily arises from the Kimberley Process Certification Scheme. Looking at African countries themselves, and we see South Africa with the likes of De Beers having changed hands. We look at Botswana. We look at Angola, Liberia as conduit countries for the illicit diamond trade. But we also have in the chain of narration of diamond trading, whether it be blood diamonds or diamonds that are legitimately mined, we have India in the process where cutting and polishing takes place. Then we have on that Russia as well. In that entire chain of diamond trading, ultimately what happens is that diamonds invariably reach the stores in North America and Western Europe. We as a Brics bloc, as the most important bloc that is playing the international field right now, have not done much to look at the resources we have. South Africa has ties with Zambia, and Zambia then, the greatest amount of export with copper goes to China. We haven't looked at anything apart from MOUs or SLAs. And I wonder why it is that we have been so reticent as a Brics bloc to be able to, I've actually, as I teach in my classes, as I present, I have been calling the Brics a bloc, a regional bloc in the past 2 or 3 years. I refer to the Brics parties, as member states, to give that recognition that the UN Charter gives to regional organizations. Now, regional organizations in the maintenance of peace and security have the ability to be able to say that we may embark upon something outside of MOUs and something outside of SLAs. We may embark upon treaties. We may embark upon legally couched documents that allow us to look at trade tariffs, that allow us to look succinctly at it's almost like playing in a sandbox, and we can see what Trump is doing right now. I'm going to hurl a handful of sand at you, and you're going to throw it right back in my eyes. It's exactly what's happening right now. When we look at South Africa and we look at the ICJ, it's a whole plethora of issues. But we are being hit really hard as a South African nation by tariffs for what we have chosen to stand up for with regards to human rights. Now, why hasn't the Brics, I'd like to understand, why haven't we as the Brics bloc embarked upon legal agreements of an economic nature within ourselves to stand up against? And I heard I think it was Professor Zen, who said that his pessimism now has somehow waned and he's become more of an optimist. I'm not so sure as to the optimism when I look at the United Nations itself and I look at the Brics bloc. And when we look at the power struggle there, it's as clear as day. It's as clear as day. Either the UN bows down to what the Brics is saying or the UN collaborates with the Brics. Either which way, that has to be done. So why haven't we embarked upon firm legal agreements that impose the GATT, the WTO? We are looking at those in any event. We have the NDB. We can have conduits. Why don't we have that at this point in time? I just, Prof. Doraisamy, that concerns me quite gravely, and I'm quite passionate about it because my human rights background and my legal background with regards to how it is that natural resources are dealt with, and this also dovetails with Prof. Bucher's, Dr. Bucher's statements as well. So I'd like to understand why it is we haven't embarked upon legal agreements to ensure that we have proper trading within the bloc and within the world itself. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you for that comments, very deep and intense. Would somebody, one of the presenters, want to respond to it? But if I could briefly, without just taking away time as well, because we've got about 15 minutes left, I think there are other conflicting issues that we need to consider. Firstly, there are diverse priorities within each of these countries, and if we, as an emerging economies, developing economies, are trying to address if I could say, the developmental issues that are afflicting us. I think we are getting so caught into the local priorities that when there is time, or there's supposed to be time, to look at common issues and come on board to address it as a block, I think that's where the challenge is. So the differing priorities and the time that it's taking up in terms of addressing it in-house, I think is one of the important factors for consideration. But also the other factor is conflicting, if I could say, interests. As you mentioned, the issue with India and the lack of keenness in terms of wanting to look at de-dollarization, or if you're looking at India and China in terms of the geopolitical issues. I think so long as those conflicts are inherent and we have not spoken or addressed it as a common area of interest from the perspective of a Brics bloc, I think these are going to be persistent problems that are going to perpetuate over the years. So I think there has to be some concerted interest or efforts put into addressing these issues if we are to move forward. Thank you.
Now, can I make an intervention? So when we talk
yes,
about
Prof.
India, when we talk about India, it's not the question of India's lack of interest in de-dollarization. Let's understand, I think, that fatal mistake we committed when Bretton Woods Agreement was signed way back. Because, very sheepishly, I think they put the dollar as the international currency. So we never, oppose that. Now let us leave that issue. How India has solved. Now the question is, to come to legality, the first thing is that we should have working mechanism. Now India and China. Now we have, a sort of bilateral trade, and the trade is going. India and Russia, we have the bilateral kind of thing. The trade is going, I think. You trade agreements, IPRs, protection, you take any number of things. My suggestion would be that either I think all the BRICS countries, they should come together and they should have live on the confrontationist mode, which I think they are not going to do that. Given that in what we have to do is we have to go for bilateralism. And we go for bilateralism, then dollar will itself become, less important and will lose its, sanctity. But we don't want that. We first, I think, should have bilateral kind of thing as India is having with China, we are having with Russia. So the major trade partners now, I think China has become the major trade partner with India. Russia is coming in a very big way. Now, given that, why we should not have more and more trade, between us, I think. There should not be any problem. Now you take also the question of payment mechanism. Now, India, this rupee or UPI is acceptable in many countries now. You take, small countries like Bhutan, you take China, you take Asian countries. I understand that it is going to other countries also. So, I would say we should take, talk of something which can work out and which can solve the problem, I think.
Thank you, Prof, for that response. Are there any other questions?
Can I just come in for a
Yes.
second?
Yes.
So I think the question also mentioned a bit about the future of BRICS and how optimistic or pessimistic we should be. I think when also refers to one of my presentation part as well. I think my argument by them is I feel more optimistic about BRICS now than I was back in 7 years ago. I agree with the comments made by the about there are structural issues, for example, geopolitics and lack of progress in legal agreements within the BRICS. I think all those issues are there and that need to be acknowledged. However, if we really look into the external pressure, I think that is a key variable to me now than before. You do see more kind of external pressure to pull those groups together. And it seems to me that the key issue within the BRICS is those kind of conflicting interests over a lot of issues like between India and China, about rising power, territorial disputes, and sovereignty, a lot of issues. However, you do see that kind of external pressure to pull those groups together to have stronger form of collective interests, which can sometimes trump conflicting interests. So I think that gives kind of new boost of energy to the group, which gave us reason to be optimistic, but also acknowledge all the structural issues there, and also now with expansion of the group membership, there might be some other issue about identity or cohesion. But I think we will need to and have to be optimistic given the current international order. I think it needs to work within the BRICS. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Prof. Jeng. Are there any other responses?
Yes, Prof.
Yes, thank you, Prof. Mbanjla.
Yes. No, I just want to respond to a comment that is written by Yogesh, where the message is saying it is high time to consider the dollarization. Please see the impacts of tariff by US. I think, as I indicated earlier on, the BRICS leaders are not willing to disrupt the international economy. Or maybe they don't just want to be upfront with the Western economies, because they are not doing things the way they are supposed to if they want to disturb or disrupt the status quo. That's why even some of the leaders who are talking too much on media about the Western operation, but when they have to implement things in their countries, they are not doing that. I think we will talk, but it's a matter of application. But also, implementing this idea will come with a very serious situation where people will suffer. So anyone who wants to take this heads on must be willing to suffer for at least for a period of about 10 to 15 years. Other than that, it should be very difficult to implement this agenda. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Dr. Professor Imbanjula. Any other comments before we close up? I'd like to invite one last comment. Anybody? Okay, in the absence of that, attendees, presenters and esteemed guests, thank you for your time. It's been a long 3 hours, but your dedication is noted and really appreciated. We had quite a powerful hub of intellectual engagement, especially individuals who are leading researchers, scholars, and practitioners from various parts of the world. Colleagues, I do hope that this is not seen as the end all and be all of this intellectual engagement. We have quite an active platform via the Brics Institute where we engage in various webinars as well as a community of practices. We have several community of practices which those of you are not aware of or do not belong to, I'd like you to encourage you to please join. I have uploaded Zama's email address. You may liaise with her. She will give you the list of COPs that we have within the Brics Institute and the interesting work that we are doing under the various COPs. I would like to encourage you to join if you're not already a member. To our other colleagues, we have shared various emails as well on this platform. But if you would like further engagement and contacts, please liaise with Fortune Mangara, who is the COP rep for governance, and he would delightfully share with you whatever information you have. And also, with the permission of our presenters, their PowerPoints would be shared, and he would also share the link to this presentation. Colleagues, thank you once again. Thank you for availing yourself. And I hope to see you at the next webinar, which we would share with you shortly. Do have a blessed afternoon and a weekend. Take care. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
bye.
Bye, colleagues.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.